we understand now that currency manipulation, that fascism, that speculation, namely derivatives markets and even currency markets, and what I'm saying is the entire world is ruled by a plutocratic financial elite who have managed to bias the system so genuinely in favor of their own interests, industry that is, that they now feel privileged enough to take over the entire United States government. Now, let's explore the role. We were talking about central banking. Let's just go over that again. Lincoln and Kennedy and Andrew Jackson all tried to stop central banking in this country, and that was considered verboten by some very ruthless people in this world. Now, it's a little different when fascists take over because they know the bankers are there and they know that system exists, but they don't have to be told what to do. They already bought in. They bought in a long time ago. Anybody who believes in unregulated derivatives markets or perpetual oil subsidies or, opening up the national parks to mining and oil exploration is obviously not in support of history, nor in support of the future. They're only in support of the present moment's illicit gain and whatever that might do to aggrandize their egos. Because if you're lacking all vision of the future and you don't know the things that I've been talking about, such as how the country actually improved fiscally every time real currency, greenbacks or United States backed notes, backed by some kind of standard, every time that those were introduced into circulation within the country, there was an improvement in the fiscal health of the United States. People could pay their bills. That's because there was no middleman. There was no fiscal agent like a Rothschild bank saying, we need our 12.5% every day. That was Indian and not European, but sorry to mix metaphors here. The genuine point is that we stand on a precipice of history because what industry is trying to do is also censure anybody who disagrees with the plan. Because through their fascist takeover of the United States, the media machine now of the United States is the machine of industry saying we are on a warpath to destroy planet Earth so that all of us can get rich quick. Just knuckle down, get a job. Forget about entitlements and benefits. Forget about public school. Just get a fucking job. Just go work at McDonald's. Let's have 5 new McDonald's for every 1,000 youths, because we got to get at least 35 or 40 of those in every city. We got to get youths to come in and eat at McDonald's and work at McDonald's. And actually, the reason I'm saying that is because I was in a room full of homeless people this week who were waiting for a free meal in Ashland, Oregon. And they were talking about just this, that there are no jobs for indigents except at Burger King or something. And that is kind of wrong, because if a city outlaws, say, chain stores or Burger Kings or whatever, and doesn't have a homeless shelter, which is kind of where we're at in Ashland, Oregon. We have a Wendy's, but not a Burger King. At any rate, the point is, there aren't any low-wage jobs to speak of for displaced peoples in Ashland, which means they're relegated to homelessness. And if they don't have a shelter, then the city is not as evolved a place as you might think, even though it's got a Shakespeare festival second to none in the world. Well, I shouldn't say second to none, because if you want to go see real Shakespeare, you should probably go to England. But this is definitely a miraculous kind of thing to have a Shakespeare festival in a little town in Oregon that's got a 50, 60, 70-year history. In general, I think what we're talking about is the fact that the polarization is not the only thing we have to overcome. We have to overcome systemic corruption of the financial systems and the monetary system. Let's just talk about that. The monetary system is based on debt. Okay? Other countries are paying our bills. We aren't paying our bills. We just go deeper into debt. So everybody who runs around like a fiscal conservative in this country that goes, all you beneficiaries of social welfare ought to just go get a job and pay your bills. Now that's the key part, because the United States doesn't pay its bills. It's the largest debtor nation in the world. Now, if there's any resonance, physical, vibrational resonance in a system, energetic resonance, then what do you think is going to happen to a country that goes perpetually into debt? Everybody will be plunged into debt slavery, including the leadership. Donald Trump is not a successful man unless somebody's paying him under the table somewhere, because he basically is a giant debtor. He just indebts himself here and there. He's got mortgages galore. You think he owns all his buildings outright? No. Like, you have a mortgage on your house, right? How much of a mortgage you got on your house? $312,000 or $218,000. Donald Trump has billions of dollars in debt. He is in debt. That man is not rich. He's so in debt. And he's probably the most indebted man in this country in some ways. Now, because he's probably indebted to somebody in a very dark place to carry out an agenda that is not very viable. Like, do you know that Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, wants to open 60 million acres, 60 million acres of oil and gas exploration in Russia with Exxon, while he still holds shares in Exxon? Do you think he divested? Ask that question. Did Donald Trump divest of his businesses? Did Rex Tillerson divest of his shares in petroleum stocks or anything related to petroleum? Do you know what they're advocating is removal of the sanctions against Russia, which I'm not entirely unopposed to. But one of the sanctions effectively shrank the 60 million acres down to 3 million acres. Now that 3 million acres is bad enough if we're really trying to build a world of sustainability. But what if they just flipped the tables on the whole world that knows climate change is in a runaway state? And they say, fuck that, we're just going to drill, baby, drill. I actually think that's what's happening, is that everybody now in the places of power believes this is the end of restraint. This is the end of moderation. This is the end of, well, maybe they won't cut subsidies to renewables. If they do that, then you know it's wholesale destruction, disaster capitalism time. Because if they don't promote renewables, which are a growth industry, now just listen, which are a growth industry, then they will be seen for the fascists that they are. However, by destroying the EPA, they're effectively doing the same thing, because the EPA creates the regulations necessary to restrain the growth of the coal mining industries and the other mining industries that spill leaching chemicals all over the place. And also, the petroleum industry as a whole will be able to run amok, even in terms of like how clean the gasoline is, probably. So I just don't see any hope in the current administration's policies, because they can't even get beyond business as usual enough to talk about things like ending the Federal Reserve. But we couldn't really do that so easily, because what that would require is a refinancing of the economy. Now, how do you refinance the economy? I have an answer. Biomass revolution. Every place you can plant something, you plant something. You plant hemp fields, you plant forests. Not corn, wheat, soybeans, canola, not any of that stuff. More permacultural, although hemp is not permacultural as such. You can really do quite well with hemp as a form of restoration, ecology, and soil remediation influence in the early stages. But ultimately what we really want to do is increase the carbon sink capacity of our nation. We can monetize that. We can monetize it on world markets. Why? Because it will be representative of a growth industry. If the United States sets ambitious targets for the reduction of carbon and the sequestration thereof through ecological means, which is equivalent to reducing emissions, then you can monetize that. That's why I should be president, frankly, but people are going to turn this off right now that I said that. Because the guy in office right now, has the reins, and unless we freaking rout them from power, which seems decidedly fractious and perhaps unlikely, we've landed ourselves in a pickle, and this kind of pickle is not one that's easy to extricate oneself from. Now, Washington, Oregon, and California have all legally seceded from certain aspects of federal edict, federal mandate. An executive order can be challenged, and it has to be challenged by the states or other proper authorities within 30 days of them being issued, or they become law. So what that means is the federal government is going to sue the states. It's going to sue the states for a dictatorial right to command their police forces, which will basically put them under martial law. Can I say that one more time, everybody? The only choice the federal government has right now is to try to put Oregon, Washington, and California under martial law, which means our police forces will be federal, not state. If they win in the courts, which they'll have to do, they can't just do this from the federal level. The states would have to sanction it. But if they got a state court, a state Supreme Court to overturn, then the state would have to appeal. And in the meantime, while the state was appealing, there would be a possibility of certain federal influence, I think, over these institutions. So this is actually war. You don't need to create a civil war. It's already fucking happening right now. This is it. We're in it. I mean, you can't say, can it get any worse, gang? No, because this is as bad as it gets. Unless people are out in the streets as militias going door to door saying, will you wear one of these red hats that say, "Make America Great Again"? If you wear this hat, everywhere you go, we will not shoot your ass. That's bullshit right there. That's what you don't want, man, because that's fucking ghetto. That's ghetto yellow star, baby. That's Star of David shit right there. So listen, in all honesty, it's irresponsible of me to try to suggest that would happen. But if we are subjected to fascist totalitarian control in this state through the imposition of a federal police force over these states in the West here, we will have basically been put in a concentration camp the size of the West Coast. It's like everybody ought to have a bug out bag, and everybody ought to have a place in the woods they know they can stay, because if the federales come, that's where you'll find me. And I can tell you that some people know exactly where I'll be. The unfortunate part is those who don't see this coming and aren't prepared for these eventualities may just roll over when it happens, because they didn't gird themselves in advance, and they're like, oh my God, what can I do? I'm so disempowered. No, you can resist all day long. You can live on herbs and berries and miner's lettuce up in the woods, and you will not die. You may feel pangs of hunger for a hamburger now and again, but you will not die. Or you'll want a nice lentil soup now and again. When you feel that, you just go and you make some pine needle tea. Over a little fire, you make some pine needle tea, and then the pine needle tea has vitamin C in it, and it will help you to deal with your hunger. So, this may seem strange that I can talk about currency manipulation, civil war, legal matters which may or may not actually come to a head, but I don't see any choice for the federal government if they want to ante up on what they say they're trying to do, which is basically get California under control. And you know, we have a very difficult road ahead of us. And I was walking around town this week because I don't drive anymore, or haven't been driving for 2.5 months. I somehow realized that we're being put through the challenges that we are right now because we're coming into a time which is going to be very challenging. And so if you haven't had challenges in advance, if you haven't been girded up for the challenges ahead, you will suffer greatly, and you won't have any concept of what's happening to you, and your grief will be horrible because you'll be like, oh my God, my whole world just collapsed. But guess what? The world you thought you had never existed. Obama just kept us from thinking it was as bad as it is. It's as bad as it was when George and Dick were in the office, okay? Now it's Mike and Don. You know, Don and Mike. It's the Don and Mike show. But in all honesty, we are the show because the people are the ones left in the aftermath of tyranny. The people are always the ones who are left because a society that is decaying from within its governmental structure due to the co-option by the corporate state is doomed to failure. It's doomed to failure because they cannot get unanimous support for it, number one. And number two, it is based on a model which is failing already. So they're trying to extend a dead and dying and corrupt, bankrupt, counterfeit model beyond its natural life by trying to resuscitate it with, like, you know, with the paddles, with the defibrillator. Clear? No, don't turn it off. Don't turn it off. I was saying clear. I see I disturbed Richard when I raised my voice like that, and he had to stop playing his guitar. But what I'm saying is that the capitalists, that the fascists and the extreme capitalists are trying to resuscitate a dead host called capitalism. It's already dead and dying. They're trying to keep it going past its natural life. Bernie Sanders had the right idea with democratic socialism. But the one thing Bernie would have had to do was audit the Fed and end subsidies to oil and regulate the derivatives market. At least those three things. End subsidies to oil and industrial agriculture, and stop bankers from speculating through derivatives that are completely unregulated. And also, what was the third thing? Well, I know I said it a minute ago, but I get mesmerized by looking into Richard's eyes because he has this ancient kind of Merlin-like look to him. But if you want to know more, go to revmount, revmount.wordpress.com, revmount.wordpress.com, and you'll read things about, you know, what I think need to be done in this nation. It's very possible we need to audit the Fed, like I was saying. That's the third thing. And currency is controlling us. And I try to tell my family this all the time, and they think I'm crazy. But let me say it one more time for the record, since I know not how long I shall live upon this earth. Currency manipulation and control is the very thing that your great heroes stood against. Lincoln, Andrew Jackson, Kennedy. Okay, they're my great heroes. They may not be yours, but if Lincoln isn't your hero, then you're freaking a white supremacist. Sorry, does that make me a supremacist? Yeah, I'm a diversity supremacist. That's what I am, bro. I'm a fucking diversity supremacist. It's supreme, dude. Diversity is fucking supreme. Diversity, not fucking white supremacy and shit. Okay, so if you don't think Lincoln was right to resist the European banks who wanted to impose a usurious usurpation of control on the destiny of these United States, and you don't make him a hero in your mind for that, if you don't make him a hero for keeping the Union together against the abject threat of slavery and economic divisiveness that was prevalent in those times, then I can only tell you that you're misguided, because Lincoln was a great hero. And so I respect the fact that he said at his death that the two things that, or near his death, he said that the two things that were dogging him the most were the South to his front and the financial institutions to his rear. And he said he feared the ones in the rear far more than the South. He said he feared them more than standing armies. Thomas Jefferson said similar things. Why? Because these are the real warmongers of the world. They will finance warmongers, and therefore are the original warmongers, because they're like in control of resources, and they're like, yeah, go ahead, kill some people, here's some money, go kill them all, and come back for more if you need it. You know, but really, the mother of the three Meyer Amschel Rothschild kids, okay, she said, if my sons didn't want war, then there would be none. Dude, does your hair stand up on the back of your neck when you realize that just a few people, one family even, funded the fucking Napoleonic Wars and killed millions? Do you not know that they funded the people who ultimately funded Hitler, which basically means they laundered money to Hitler's to polarize the world around the Jewish question, so that the Jews would try to go get their own homeland, so that they could then later in World War III, which they're working on now, polarize the Jews against the Muslims so they'd kill themselves. They are exterminators of humanity. They're actually trying to kill us. They are war makers of the worst kind. They've planned this out for hundreds of years in advance to fucking kill us all. Get the nuclear question going, then you got some bad shit going down. So when Donald Trump this week said, or last week, losing track at this point, said that he will make sure Iran never gets the bomb. He's committed that Iran, to Iran never getting the bomb. He completely went against the work of John Kerry in negotiating a major Iranian nuclear deal, which people have poo-pooed, But as I was saying earlier, I shouldn't digress too quickly from that nuclear thing, because Iran is going to get the bomb if it doesn't have it already. And why? Because they're not going to be under the thumb of Israel's undeclared, unconfirmed, and uninspected nuclear program, which means they could have massive hydrogen bombs that would basically evaporate all of Iran from the face of the earth. And nobody knows, because Iran won't let anybody look at their program, because it's officially doesn't exist. It's the only country in the world that we all know has nuclear weapons, but won't allow anybody to come in and inspect them. So isn't it totally duplicitous for us to be going after Iran for trying to get the bomb, when Israel will not let any of the International Atomic Energy personnel come to their country and inspect their weapons or their reactors or anything? Well, and why does the U.S. continually support this behavior on the part of Israel? It's not okay. It's not okay. Anyway, if I don't run for president in 2020 and if I don't get shot, then I would like to bring these concepts, these issues to a national stage, because it's not something I'm mildly passionate about. It's something I'm willing to throw my entire life force behind. And that means letting go of everything. You have to let go of everything, because you cannot take anything with you when you leave this world except your honor. The samurai knew this, even the ninja. Although they were questionably honorable, but they were honorable to their shogun. So when you're a sovereign being, you could create your own passport. And like the Hopi people did, and you could travel the world without being called a United States citizen. Now, I know some people are doing this because there's a group called the Republic of New Lemuria, and they own some small pieces of islands out in the Pacific, which will probably disappear with climate change. But one of those islands is a seamount upon which you could erect a city on the ocean. And that's what I really want to do, is have a city that's actually floating but anchored to a seamount. Anyway, don't quote me on that. But the point is, this group, the Republic of New Lemuria, which you can find online, is a bona fide sovereign nation that declared itself to exist. Seriously doubt it's currently recognized by the UN, but it has some kind of banner of support from something called the, oh gosh, I can't remember right now. We'll have to look it up online. But they are trying to say that they have the right to declare nationhood and sovereign status as a nation. Now, if you were a sea-steading sovereign who had a seamount and you could build your own little kingdom, queendom out there, which was like a constant mutually supportive tribal environment where there's no competition but only mutual support, by contract and by covenant, then you could actually shrug off all of consumer capitalism in a heartbeat, in about 2 seconds. And I want to do that, even if I have to lock myself in some kind of experimental biodome for a year to demonstrate that I can live by myself off of grasses and various things. Anyway, space is not the final frontier. The final frontier is freedom. But there's a myth surrounding freedom, which means you don't actually get to do whatever you want. Like the Bodhisattva, when he finally realizes he's free, turns around and goes back to everything he always ever did, which is to show up for humanity, to be there for one's fellow being, to be there for being itself, to not dissolve one's existence as long as it can be of benefit. So people say that Buddhism isn't a real religion, but when it says shit like that there are real beings like who are motivated by love or loving kindness, Maitri. In fact, the new Buddha that's coming is supposed to be the Maitreya Buddha, somebody who would actually care enough about everybody that he would show up in a unique way. She or he would show up in a unique way to be of service to the whole through loving kindness. Because the Buddha isn't a selfish principle. It's only selfish in that it must seek enlightenment in order to be of service. So, enlightenment means that you realize service is not servitude. Service is freedom. Servant leadership is the best kind. self-aggrandizing and self-benefiting leadership like that of Rex Tillerson and others who are Exxon guy, if he hasn't divested of all of his petroleum interests and he's lifting the sanctions on Russia to be able to do more oil and gas exploration there, or if he benefits in any way from petroleum industry growth that he had a hand in creating policy around. I mean, it's getting so murky that the conflicts of interest are rife. It's almost like these people are genuine bloody criminals and they don't care that you know it. They don't care, and they don't care that you know it. My voice is going out, so I'm going to stop now, but let's listen to Richard for a second, see if I can get some water. You're not going to play anymore?